It exposed how discovering her $1 million net worth transformed his views on love and league. Daniel leaned back in his chair, the papers from the latest term exams scattered across his desk, a reflection of the organized chaos that defined his life. As a math teacher in a small Midwestern town, he prided himself on the values instilled in him by his working-class upbringing. He believed in hard work, in the dignity that came from earning one's way, and in family loyalty over any form of wealth. This ethos colored his world, and yet everything shifted the moment Sarah walked into the teacher's lounge. With her vibrant laughter, she seamlessly blended colors and emotions into her everyday existence, a stark contrast to his structured life filled with numbers and formulas. He couldn't shake the warmth that spread through him every time she smiled at him. Week after week, their connection blossomed amid shared coffee breaks and laughter that echoed through the empty hallways. The boundaries of his simplistic life began to blur, yet Daniel remained blissfully ignorant of the hidden realities lurking beneath Sarah's captivating exterior. Then came that day when everything changed. An article appeared in the local newspaper, "Wealthy Art Dealers, the Untold Stories Behind the Brushstrokes." And there it was, her name splashed across the page, revealing a $1 million net worth, a lineage of influence in the art world. It was as if the ground had shifted beneath him, leaving him grappling with insecurities he had never recognized within himself. Had he been a fool to get lost in her charm, a naive dreamer while she lived in a different realm? Pressure bubbled within him, twisting his thoughts into contradictions. On one hand, he felt the thrill of their connection, laughing under the stars, sharing dreams as if social divides didn't exist. But how could he, with his bread-and-butter lifestyle, truly belong in her world? The community around him started to whisper, doubts seeping from family and friends alike. She could do much better, they would say, their eyebrows raised with skepticism. What if they were right? Did he really love her, or was he just a charity case chasing after her fortune? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Each day grew heavier with contemplation. He envisioned their future intertwined, but was lost within his fear of inadequacy. How could love exist in the shadow of wealth? He doubted himself, his motives wrapped in anguish. The community's eyes reflected judgment, and his mind raced with the thoughts he couldn't voice. Would Sarah ever see him as more than a placeholder? Then the art show, the moment he'd hoped would reclaim pride that had started to fray. Daniel worked tirelessly to showcase her talent, his work a tangible testament to his feelings and his belief in her art. But as the town's elite arrived, an anxiety coursed through him, tightening his chest. Their scornful glances and taunting murmurs tightened the grip of doubts surrounding his heart. Would he, once a champion of unyielding love, crumble before their scrutiny? Staring at Sarah, showcasing her artwork, Daniel faced a pivotal choice. He could either embrace the love they had built or recoil, caught between the notions of worth and the judgments of a town that thrived on divisions. The air crackled with tension, an emotional storm brewing, leaving his heart in turmoil. Could he confront the hidden truths lurking within their very different worlds, or would their connection falter under the weight of public opinion? Daniel's breath hitched in his throat as he watched Sarah interact with the attendees of the art show. Her confidence radiated like sunlight, illuminating the space around her, while his own shadow loomed larger than ever. Each compliment directed at her felt like a dagger to his chest, piercing the fragile pride he clung to. The whispers of the crowd melded into a cacophony that drowned out his thoughts. She's too good for him. What would they even talk about? The questions echoed incessantly. He shifted uncomfortably on his feet, feeling out of place amidst the polished spheres that navigated conversation with ease. He was the outsider, the underachiever in a world that valued status and wealth over authenticity. Daniel sensed the shift within himself.
The man who once believed in the power of love now questioned every smile they shared, every laugh that stitched their spirits together. Their bond had flourished in secrecy, untarnished by social expectations, but here in the glaring light, it felt vulnerable and exposed. His heart raced as he caught Sarah's gaze from across the room. There was a glimmer in her eyes, a mixture of artful passion and pure joy that he found intoxicating. But as he stared back, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was operating on a different frequency, one so far removed from his humble reality. In that moment, he realized that this was not just about wealth. It thrummed deeper within him, a struggle for self-worth that had been festering long before Sarah stepped into his life. Determined to understand the trajectory of their relationship, Daniel decided he could no longer stand by silently, letting insecurities dictate his actions. He excused himself from the gathering with a barrage of self-reassurances. He loved her, didn't he? Wasn't that enough?
Channeling his anxiety into clarity, he approached Sarah, weaving through the gallery peppered with illustrious artworks and even more illustrious patrons. "Sarah," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper, "can we talk?" She turned, a smile blooming on her face, but Daniel noticed the fleeting shadow of concern. Perhaps even she sensed the tremors of discontent rattling beneath the surface of their connection. "Of course," she replied, stepping away from a group admiring her work, her enthusiasm undimmed. "Everything okay?" "Not exactly," he sighed, leaning against a display as the weight of his feelings settled heavily upon his shoulders. "I've been thinking about us, about me." She nodded, her expression softening. "What do you mean?" He took in a deep breath, searching for the words potent enough to break the dam within. "I want to know if I really have a place in your world. Sometimes I doubt that I can fit into your life, especially with everything." Sarah raised an eyebrow, confusion etched across her features. "Everything?" Daniel gestured vaguely to the crowd, the glints of wealth and privilege swirling around them. "The art, the status. It's all so different. I'm afraid that once people find out I'm just a math teacher from a small town, it'll change everything we have." Her expression shifted, the shadows of hurt flickering across her face momentarily. "Daniel, you have to know that who you are is more important to me than what you do or where you come from. I fell in love with you, not your job title. You see me for me, not as an art dealer." Yet uncertainty still coiled within him, tightening its grip. "But what if, in a week or a month, that's not enough for you? There's a part of me that keeps feeling like I'm just holding you back." He watched as Sarah's facade started to unravel. "You're not just holding me back, Daniel. You inspire me. The way you see life with integrity and passion, don't you see how that enriches everything I do?" He wanted to believe her words. Still, doubt clung to him like a shadow he could not shake. "Then how do we move past this?" he asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Silence hung between them like a tightrope taut with tension. "The moment of truth is here," she said finally, her gaze piercing into his chest. "Are you willing to risk it all, this perceived safety of your life, for something that could be extraordinary?" The challenge sparked a flicker of determination deep within him, battling against the waves of fear crashing over. He understood now that this was beyond wealth. It was about trusting in the raw essence of love. Daniel stepped closer, a resolve solidifying in his mind. To be with Sarah, he would have to confront not only the perceptions of others, but also the fractured pieces of his own self-worth. The interplay between love and fear, wealth and authenticity, could no longer trap him in indecision.
What lay ahead was uncertain, but perhaps it was time to dismantle the walls he had built. Could he truly confront both his insecurities and his community? In that moment, a new understanding formed. He was standing at a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. But could he embrace the potential fallout? The realization that this could be the point where everything shifted hung in the air, electrifying, yet intimidating. The decision carried weight, both exhilarating and terrifying. Daniel inhaled the tension, preparing himself for the leap into uncharted territory. Yet, as he gazed into Sarah's eyes, a thought struck him. What if he wasn't just terrified of this new path, but also afraid of the love that awakened within him? And if he couldn't shake his doubts, could love alone propel him through the storm? With these questions swirling like an unsteady current, Daniel recognized he stood at the edge of transformation, one that could either nourish his spirit or shatter the very foundation he'd relied upon? Would he dare to step forward, or would fear loom larger than love itself? Daniel felt the unmistakable tension of an impending storm brewing inside him as he stood before Sarah. The potential for change hung in the air, a fragile thread, both exhilarating and terrifying. Her eyes sparkled with hope, calling him forward, yet doubt wrapped around his heart. Pushing aside his disquiet, Daniel took a decisive step into the unfamiliar territory of vulnerability. "I think I need to embrace this," he said, his voice steadying as he spoke the words he feared most. "I'll try to be open, to us." Even as he said it, the enormity of what he was promising loomed over him. Sarah's smile bloomed brighter, momentarily easing the storm inside him, but as easily as it had appeared, her joy was clouded by a series of unasked questions that lingered. His past experiences whispered warnings in his mind, reminding him of moments he had chosen safety over risk. "Thank you for trusting me," she said, her voice laced with sincerity. "We can tackle this together." "Together," he echoed, searching her expression for any hint of hesitation. Yet, as his gaze swept across the room filled with vibrant art and vibrant souls, anxiety gripped him again. How could they redefine their relationship when he felt so defined by his doubts? Retreating mentally into himself, Daniel considered the looming challenge before him. He needed to confront not only his own insecurities, but the expectations he imbued in their relationship. With every cheerful conversation surrounding them, he felt more acutely aware of the social divide that could threaten what they shared. Gripping the edge of a nearby display, he anchored himself as he formulated a plan. No more automatic retreats. Each time he felt the urge to shrink back in the face of her life, he would remind himself of his worth.
His career as a math teacher, while different from the world she navigated, spoke to the core of who he was. The lives he touched each day, be they students or family, resonated with intangible wealth that reversed their previously defined paradigms. "Let's make our own rules," Daniel said, a newfound determination pushing through fear-laden waters. "I don't want to be the one who's always standing in the dark, feeling less than. I want to find a way to celebrate what we share without comparing." Sarah's nod felt like sunlight piercing through the clouds. "That's what I'm talking about. Break through the doubts. It's about finding equilibrium in what we each bring to the table." He took a breath, wrapping his mind around the concept of collaboration in their love. As they spoke, each performance of clarity made Daniel feel stronger, an artful approach in his life, devoid of reservations. Yet, even as his determination surged, he still felt raw. The fear of inadequacy was a specter he couldn't completely dispel. Yet he knew he had gained insight into how they might navigate the treacherous waters. But the crowd around them shifted, distractions waiting to invade the sanctuary they'd begun constructing together. Something malicious stirred beneath the surface. An acquaintance of Sarah's, a well-groomed man in a tailored suit, caught Daniel's eye, sending a pang of insecurity through him. This was a man who thrived in social environments, one of those who commanded attention and respect with each measure of his presence. Daniel's heart raced as he watched the way Sarah greeted him with an easy smile, lightness in her demeanor that contrasted sharply with the weight Daniel felt on his shoulders. In that instant, he recognized the fragility of the promise he had just spoken. Thoughts spiraled, unleashing a torrent of doubt. Would he constantly be measuring himself against this world? The realization struck him. He would have to actively choose trust, not just in Sarah, but in himself. He had to believe that he had something genuine to offer, even if it was intangible compared to slick appearances or grand gestures. All of this while navigating their evolving dynamic felt as challenging as a complex mathematical problem waiting for a solution. "Hey, how's the show?" the man asked, flashing a grin that seemed to shine brighter than the expensive art behind him. Sarah glanced to Daniel, her eyes flickering with a question. Was he ready to stand beside her in these moments? With determination coursing through him, Daniel straightened his posture, willing the shadows of doubt aside, and stepped closer to Sarah. "I've been enjoying learning about all of this," he said, his voice steady despite the gnawing fear within. As Sarah introduced him, he sensed a pivotal change occurring within him, the edges of his self-doubt starting to fray.
The challenge was real, and as he prepared to engage, a thought crossed his mind. What if he wasn't just standing up against his fears, but also building the connection that love demanded? Would he continuously battle against the tides of insecurity, or rise to meet them with conviction? Awakening something new within himself, Daniel understood he was ready to reshape his narrative. Yet the gnawing sensation remained. Could he muster the courage to continually redefine their relationship amidst the uniqueness of their worlds? The moment felt electric, but before he could explore this vulnerability further, the conversation shifted. Would he be enough? Would the tensions build until they burst, scattering pieces of what they had begun to create? Or could he forge an inner strength that would carry them through? In that uncertainty, Daniel realized he stood not just at a crossroads, but on the brink of a revolution within himself, one that could either fuse their paths or serve as the breaking point. What he did next would leave an indelible mark on their relationship and himself. The looming challenges seemed insurmountable, but for the first time he felt the possibility of synergy ignite within him. What awaited just beyond the horizon? Was it promise or peril? As Daniel adjusted his posture, the warmth of Sarah's presence beside him almost tempered his anxiety. Yet the polished grace of her acquaintance, marked by affability and effortless charm, gripped Daniel's attention like a vice. Each laugh that erupted from the man felt like a judgment, a mark against him. Each nod from Sarah, an unspoken reinforcement of the distance Daniel marveled at. He willed himself to engage more with the conversation. "I hope you're not too distracted to also enjoy the art here," Daniel interjected, finding a moment of courage. "There's a lot of talent in this room, isn't there?" The words struck the air before he could retract them, a half-hearted attempt to bridge an emotional chasm he had just begun to comprehend. The man turned, his grin sharp and predatory. "Art? Yes, but networking is where the real beauty lies." A wince formed in Daniel's core. There it was again, that defining line. While Sarah stood firm in her own sphere, Daniel felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The imminent danger of falling back into the shadow of inadequacy lurked menacingly. A simple question surfaced in the undercurrent of the exchange. How could he, a humble math teacher, compete with the likes of this effortlessly charismatic figure? As the chatter around them buzzed, Daniel's mind began racing. To combat this new reality that pressed upon him, he needed clarity. He had battled his insecurities countless times before, but this felt far more personal. Hadn't he, just moments ago, vocalized his willingness to redefine their relationship? Do you often find art to be a distraction?
Sarah's assertive voice cut through his thoughts like a knife, her eyes narrowing slightly at the man. Daniel admired her poise and determination. She was intent on keeping the conversation rich, and it inspired him to take another leap. "Yes," he chimed in, testing his voice against his uncertainty. "Art often reflects both personal stories and societal challenges, don't you think? It's deeper than just decoration." The challenge lingered. The man raised an eyebrow, caught off guard, and for a second something shifted. The air thickened with intrigue. Interesting perspective. Most people just come to look pretty and sip wine. Daniel's heart raced, then steadied as he saw a glimmer of respect in Sarah's gaze. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He was fighting against the current, propelling forward instead of succumbing to self-doubt. It wasn't merely an attempt to win approval, but a reaffirmation of his identity. "Everyone's approach is different," Daniel responded, feeling a newfound strength coursing like adrenaline through him. "Art can invite both beauty and discomfort, just like relationships." From the corner of his vision, he caught glimpses of the well-groomed man's expression falter, if only for a fraction of a second. Seizing the moment, Daniel pressed on. "The challenge is finding balance, just like in math. Too many variables lead to confusion. Finding the right equation brings clarity." The group exchanged looks, and for the first time, Sarah's smile matched his burgeoning confidence. Perhaps he was building more than just a connection. He was forging a bridge between their worlds. Yet deep within, the apprehension churned, reminding him that transformation was complex and often fraught with contradictions. Was this fleeting victory an indicator of lasting growth, or just a momentary reprieve? A flicker of doubt emerged as Sarah's acquaintance steered the conversation sharply towards business ventures, moments layered with glances that felt like daggers. Daniel keenly felt the stakes rise. He had to combat not only the man's presence, but the entrenched notions whispering hesitantly in his mind. "Let's talk about growth," Daniel decided to redirect, determined he would not let fear shackle him again. "How do you envision partnerships evolving in today's economy?" The question sent whispers of challenge into the air, and just as he began to feel the intimacy of the discussion taking hold, the man's smile returned, an unsettling glint in his eyes. "Partnerships thrive on investment, my friend, but they crumble without true commitment from both sides." With those words, the fabric of Daniel's carefully constructed confidence began to fray again. The connection he had felt just moments ago seemed contingent upon unrecognized strings. Was he just standing at the edge of a deeper divide?
In the face of this discomfort, Daniel recognized he was still on a journey, one littered with obstacles that could either fortify him or break him apart. The question loomed larger than before. Could he trust himself despite the gnawing doubts, or would he retreat into the safe confines of self-denial? As the atmosphere thickened, Daniel realized this was more than a social interaction. It was a test of his resolve and the complexity of his evolving relationship with Sarah. Would he forge new pathways alongside her, or would past injuries dictate his choices? The moment hung in the air, pregnant with uncertainty. Yet he felt something shift inside, a determination to confront not only the external pressures, but also the internal battles that remained to be fought. With this epiphany crystallizing within him, he understood that the upcoming choices would lay the groundwork for more than just his individual journey. They could reshape their connection, recasting the narrative he had been so afraid to embrace. And beneath the enigmatic gaze of one well-groomed man were the seeds of expansion, both personal and relational. The moment of truth demanded that he rise. Yet, as Daniel's resolve fortified, a shadow on the edge of Sarah's expression, a flicker of doubt mirrored in her eyes, left him holding his breath for the next turn. Was he truly ready to confront the depths of their relationship, or would some truths prove too daunting to face? As the evening unfolded, he realized he didn't just need to navigate through social waters, but also within himself, an uncharted territory that loomed jagged and vast. In facing the pressures of the moment, he could either build a bridge or find himself lost in the chaos of expectations. The stakes felt increasingly severe, and the real test of his strength was yet to come. Daniel's grip tightened around his glass as he tried to ground himself. The clinking laughter from the other guests began to feel distant, like the echoes from another world. Sarah's companion's words hung heavily in his ears, and doubt wafted back in like a chilling breeze. The moment felt pivotal. He could either plunge into the depths of his insecurity or surge forward into uncharted waters. Commitment, indeed, Daniel echoed, his voice firmer this time as he darted a glance at Sarah, seeking reassurance. The brief nod she offered felt like a lifeline. He realized he needed to anchor himself not just in the conversation, but in the trust he felt toward her. But I think real commitment extends beyond investments, doesn't it? It's about giving something of yourself and being vulnerable. The man's smirk faltered, revealing only a flicker of irritation before he masked it. Vulnerability is overrated in business, he replied, his tone carrying an undercurrent meant to belittle. Playing your cards too openly can backfire. You're a math teacher after all. Numbers are all about precision and certainty.
Daniel's pulse quickened at the challenge. And yet, being human goes beyond numbers. Life isn't always so clear-cut. It's the uncertainties that offer the real opportunities for growth. In that fleeting moment, Daniel felt the whispers of his past, those endless days of self-doubt and unworthiness, begin to dissolve. No longer was he merely echoing what felt like empty platitudes. He was asserting a belief in the complexities of both business and personal relationships. The air around him shifted subtly, shifted by the undercurrents of his declaration. Exactly, Sarah chimed in, her enthusiasm evident, radiating energy that wrapped around both men. Relationships thrive on open communication, and isn't that the key to successful partnerships too? Understanding nuances rather than just relying on hard numbers. The well-groomed man opened his mouth, but the spark in Sarah's eyes held him back. There was a sense of unity building between them, a small but significant shift. It was intoxicating, and Daniel relished the feeling of being part of this dynamic exchange. Yet just as he began to bask in the glow of this tension, a familiar gnawing began at the edges of his confidence. Was it genuine progress, or merely an attempt to mask his disdain for his own insecurities? He had always felt like an outsider. Partnerships are about trust, both in business and in personal matters, he said, diving in deeper. It's about being willing to invest in the unknowns together. The man snorted, glancing dismissively at Daniel before turning to Sarah. You really see something in this fellow? Seems like he's too caught up in lofty ideals to grasp the reality of life's hard truths. A pang of irritation surged through Daniel. He took a breath, ready to unearth a truth he had buried within himself. Maybe it's time to challenge what we consider real. Numbers can lay a foundation, but stories and emotions build a structure that lasts. For a moment, time froze. The words resonated, creating ripples in the stillness of the room. Daniel was stepping on firm ground, not only advocating his views, but standing up for his worth.
But still, doubt crept in silently, reminding him of the fragility that lay just beneath the surface. Was he equipped to navigate these deeper waters? There remained a desperation in him to prove that he could understand both relationships and partnerships on a level that surpassed mere emotional currency. His eyes met Sarah's, seeking yet another anchor. What did she see in him? Realization struck hard. This wasn't just about the conversation surrounding them. It was also a reflection of how he viewed himself. He realized he would have to confront the uncomfortable truth that self-worth could not be measured in comparisons. As the minutes ticked by, he felt an internal resolve solidifying.
He could remain defined by what he lacked, or he could embrace the very complexities that made him unique, including his passions for math and teaching. Perhaps there's value in understanding that both perspectives bring merit to the conversation, Daniel resumed, feeling the words weave a strong pattern through the air. Collaboration requires both sides to listen and adapt. Abruptly, the conversation was interrupted as another guest moved to join them, and Daniel welcomed the distraction. But the internal struggle had only just begun. He sensed that this encounter was an invitation to peel back layers he had long kept hidden, both for himself and for Sarah. Could he reveal more of himself? The parts he feared? Could he embrace potential vulnerabilities while still maintaining his strength? A sudden realization washed over him. There were new dimensions of himself he had yet to explore, creative strategies born from his unique perspective. But was he prepared to share those revelations beyond the surface? As he made his decision to lean into the unease, he realized it wouldn't be easy. The shadows of fear still loomed, but they no longer dictated his path. Just beneath the surface, a new determination anchored him. He could redefine his story, one conversation at a time. But as he prepared to dive deeper into this fragile yet exhilarating narrative, a realization settled in. Sarah's gaze hinted at layers he had yet to traverse in their dynamic. What barriers stood between them and his personal breakthrough? What truths lay buried within their relationship that he was not yet ready to confront? The tension thickened, beckoning him to forge ahead into a new chapter, a leap that might yield not only personal growth, but a transformation in how he perceived and nurtured their connection. Daniel's attention flickered back to the mingling guests, distraction easing his mind just slightly, yet the underlying tension refused to dissipate. Thoughts of Sarah's uncharted depths knotted him, her presence pulsating with a magnetic energy that both intrigued and unnerved him. He needed to engage with her, to delve deeper into this connection that felt like a lifeline but also a precarious tightrope walk. The conversation faded as he watched her laughter dance with her companions. He felt a twinge of envy. Was he merely a background character in her vibrant story? The previous confidence began to fray at the edges, replaced by the gnawing fear that he might never grasp the emotional landscape she inhabited. Daniel found himself conjecturing about Sarah's world, the life she had crafted. How many layers lay behind her apparent assurance? What experiences shaped her perspective on commitment? Questions spiraled, and as they did, he felt the familiar barrier of self-doubt rise like a towering wall. Taking a deep breath, Daniel realized that self-reflection wasn't enough. It was time to act, with purpose.
Could he unlock this conversation and reveal something deeper, something genuine? It spiraled in his mind, colliding with the insecurity he thought he had pushed back. The idea of sharing his own vulnerabilities became tantalizing, yet terrifying. "Daniel?" Sarah's voice broke through the haze of his thoughts, her expression filled with concern. He met her gaze, and for a moment the noise of the world around them faded. "Can we talk? I want to understand more about you." She tilted her head slightly, inviting yet cautious. "Sure, what's on your mind?" Daniel motioned to a quieter corner of the room, where fewer prying eyes would linger. As they moved, the gravity of what he might reveal pressed heavily against his chest. Could this be the moment he peeled away the curtain of his insecurities? "Sarah, I often feel like there's so much I don't grasp about this world you navigate," he confessed, his voice steady, though the tremor within betrayed a flicker of vulnerability. "You seem comfortable in spaces I can barely fathom. It scares me." She studied him, her brow furrowing thoughtfully. "You mean the social dynamic of business connections?" Daniel nodded, relieved she grasped his intent. "I've always been more comfortable with numbers, metrics, equations. But then there's this whole emotional realm I've avoided. I've built walls, not bridges." Sarah's gaze softened, her eyes reflecting an understanding that eased his tension. "Daniel, it's natural to feel that way. But the world you describe, it's not just about emotion or business. It's about how we connect with each other on multiple levels." He sensed her sincerity, but paradoxically felt more unsure.
Is it really possible to bridge that divide? I fear I'll always struggle to relate to that high-stakes environment. A moment of silence passed before she spoke, her voice gentle yet firm. You define your own stakes, and believe me, emotional intelligence isn't as distant from mathematical precision as you might think. Both require depth, understanding nuance. Her words struck him, echoing a truth he had barely acknowledged, that vulnerability wasn't a sign of weakness, but rather a gateway to building something substantial. Sometimes I feel like I'm wavering between two worlds, he admitted, a part of him yearning to break free from the insecurity that kept him tethered. What if I show my true self and it's not enough? What if it's everything? Sarah pressed on, her energy vibrant, lighting the potential shadows looming in his mind. You might find that showing your true self invites others to do the same. It's a two-way street. This conversation began to forge a path through Daniel's long-held fears, a knot of possibilities twisting in his stomach. Was it time for him to step down from the sidelines, to become an active player, not just in their burgeoning relationship, but in his own life story? His heart raced as determination coiled around the hesitant hope brewing within him.
But just as he felt ready to embrace this challenge, a sudden thought pierced the moment. Would revealing the depths of his past sabotage the fragile connection growing between them? He hesitated, the weight of unshared experiences lingering like shadows deep within him. Could he trust Sarah enough to delve into his fears and triumphs? The question hovered like a murky fog, and just then the sound of laughter erupted nearby, dragging him back from the brink. Maybe we should talk more about the things you've mentioned, Sarah suggested, her eyes brimming with encouragement. Yeah, I think I need to. But would it be enough to not just reshape their connection, but redefine his own worth? As he contemplated this, he felt the crux of a forthcoming revelation poised to change everything. What if, behind the layers of her charm and hidden depths, Sarah carried a secret that would prove to be the key to not just their relationship, but his own understanding of success and love? Daniel's pulse quickened as he absorbed Sarah's invitation. Her gaze held a promise of openness, yet a voice within him screamed for caution. This conversation, vibrant with potential, felt like a double-edged sword. As they lingered in that corner of the room, away from the revelers, a small yet profound decision loomed before him: to maintain the status quo or to leap into uncharted territory. The weight of silence stretched between them, punctuated only by distant laughter. He felt the gravity of her two-word question still hanging in the air. What if? Could he truly answer that without unearthing his buried fears? Past experiences played through his mind like an old reel: failures, heartbreak, the quiet acceptance that he often resigned himself to being an observer rather than a participant. I don't want to just float in your world, he finally admitted, surprising even himself. The truth had slipped past his defenses, as if compelled by the magnetic pull of their connection. I want to engage, to contribute, but I'm terrified of what's been holding me back. Fear can be a powerful motivator, she replied, her voice low yet resonant. But it can also be paralyzing. What's the worst that could happen if you let go a little? What if you discover something about yourself? His heart thudded in his chest. It was a question he had skirted around for far too long. Each interaction he had ever chosen to bypass had fortified the barriers around his emotions. Yet here stood Sarah, inviting him to dismantle his defenses piece by piece. Every time I try to connect on a deeper level, the fear whispers that I won't be enough, he confessed. The admission tasted bittersweet, a culmination of years spent fearing rejection. He could feel the warmth of her empathy as it radiated through the air, but her understanding felt intertwined with a thread of uncertainty. Then let's redefine enough together. I don't expect perfection, Daniel.
I'm exploring the same territory as you are, she encouraged. In her eyes, he sensed a glimmer of understanding that shifted the focus from his self-doubt. If their dynamic was indeed a two-way street, then finding the courage to expose his vulnerabilities could invite her to do the same. It was a moment of reckoning. He could either turn away from it or allow it to spark a transformation that revolutionized his self-perception. Okay, Daniel said, exhaling deeply as if releasing the fears that had long nagged at him. I'll share a piece of my past. With each word he felt weight lift off his shoulders, though apprehension lurked beneath the exhilaration of liberation. He recalled the moment that had solidified his careful exterior. In college, I was crushed when my girlfriend cheated on me. It shattered my confidence. I built a fortress around my heart, fearing that exposing my true self would only lead to more hurt. Sarah remained silent, her eyes fixed on him,
encouraging him to continue. Her presence became a balm for the rawness of his confession. Since then, I've won at the game of numbers, excelling at work, but there's this entire emotional universe I've shut out. I'm scared of stepping back in. Emotions might feel chaotic, but they're also what make us human, she replied softly. It's okay if who you are is messy. That's part of growth. It's not about being perfect. Her perspective pulled him closer toward a revelation he wasn't sure he was ready for. Could the emotional chaos indeed lead to a sense of fulfillment? He would have to connect with her, to see beyond the emotional barricades he had fortified over the years. Yet, as he considered the power behind her words, a familiar unease crept back into his thoughts. What if vulnerability in this instance unraveled everything? What if the mutual sharing that felt liberating also exposed a vulnerability he wasn't prepared to face? What if we unearth the truth, yours and mine, he proposed cautiously, meeting her gaze with growing resolve. What if we discover we're not what each other expected? The moment stretched, charged with possibilities, leaving a taste of hope mixed with trepidation. Then we'll navigate that together, Sarah said, her smile both reassuring and daunting. Daniel felt the leap he was contemplating deepen before him, pulling him into the exploration he had been avoiding for so long. But with this promising step came the vertigo of uncertainty. Could the layers of honesty they peeled back lead towards something richer, or would they ultimately unveil truths he wasn't ready to confront? As he grappled with his insecurities, he became acutely aware that Sarah too held her own secrets just waiting to be uncovered. He took a breath, ready to explore what lay beneath that surface, unaware that their conversation would soon unravel the very fabric of his understanding of love and success in unexpected and profound ways.
But as they leaned closer, the fear of revealing deeper embers within himself remained, a fear laced with potential. The time was nearing when both truths would collide, breathing life into their fragile connection. Would he be able to bear the weight of those truths, and would Sarah be willing to share hers? Daniel felt a tremor in his hands as he absorbed Sarah's words, a mix of exhilaration and dread spiraling within him. The prospect of unraveling their truths seemed to pulse with both promise and peril. He had been an architect of his own emotional detachment, carefully constructing barriers to shield him from potential heartbreak. Now, confronted by the challenge to tear those walls down, the very ground beneath him felt unsteady. "What if," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "we learn that the things we hide are the very things that connect us?" The idea hung between them, a fragile thread that could either fracture under tension or weave a bond stronger than either of them dared to imagine. Sarah's eyes shimmered with intrigue, spurring him on. "Let's take that leap together, Daniel. Let's see what we've buried beneath our enoughs." He nodded, wishingly embracing her encouragement, but the battle raged on inside him. Would this journey reveal not only Sarah's hidden desires, but open the floodgates of his own vulnerabilities? He had spent years crafting an image of stability and success through sheer will and tenacity. Yet behind that facade, the boy who trembled in the wake of betrayal still lurked, shadowed by a fear of repeated failures. "What would you want to know about me?" he asked, carefully honing the moment in a bid to capture Sarah's curiosity. The atmosphere grew thicker, buoyed by unspoken truths waiting to be acknowledged. "What makes you feel alive?" she queried, her voice gentle but laced with an underlying urgency, as if pressing him toward a breakthrough. The question sent jolts of introspection through Daniel, the kind of inquiry he'd previously cataloged under too risky. He had dedicated so much of his life to structured routines and visible successes, crafting a persona meant to dazzle, but leaving little room for joy. I think I've forgotten how to feel alive," he admitted finally, a sense of defeat accompanying the confession. The words tasted foreign on his tongue, each syllable an echo of disappointment in himself. "I've chased validation through my career and ideas, but it all feels hollow at times. I guess I always believed that those achievements would shield me from hurt." Sarah's gaze narrowed at his words, a flicker of understanding illuminating her features. "But there's more to life than accolades, right? What if you allowed yourself to pursue not just success, but what resonates with your heart? Maybe then you'll find the aliveness you're seeking." Her insight rattled something deep within him.
Could his need for emotional protection have imprisoned him for so long that he'd lost sight of what truly mattered? The thought spiraled into a revelation, the correlation between authenticity and connection. Surely the journey toward emotional honesty could yield the answers he needed. What if I chose to prioritize exploration over fear? He mused, the idea embedding itself within him like a long-lost compass. What if I invited my emotions back into my life instead of exiling them? A pulse of determination surged through him. Still, as he spoke those words, a gritty uncertainty clawed at him. The prospect of confronting layered complexities left him feeling simultaneously liberated and terrified. Okay, let's promise one thing, he continued, averting his gaze for just a moment. We both have to take turns revealing things about ourselves. It can't just be me. We need to foster that openness together. Agreed, she replied, her eyes sparkling with newfound energy. I want to know your truth, and I want to share mine. Vulnerability shouldn't be unbalanced. He could sense a flicker of joy at the prospect, yet doubt lingered in the recesses of his mind. What if she revealed a past that stood in stark contrast to the person he envisioned alongside? The anxiety rolled through him like a tide as he considered layers of her experience he hadn't yet accessed. What's your biggest fear, Sarah? He posited, deliberately shifting the spotlight to her. A moment of silence enveloped them, charged with newfound stakes, brimming with potential risks. Trust, she replied, her voice steady yet tinged with ongoing confrontation. Trusting myself, trusting others. I worry about being perceived differently from who I truly am, just like you, she continued. The parallel struck him with force. In their exploration of honesty, they weren't merely engaging with the flaws and fears that dictated their perceptions, but finding a reflection of one another. That realization embedded a sense of unity between them he hadn't anticipated. As the conversation flourished, Daniel felt a stirring within him. Perhaps this was the catalyst he needed, a shared journey of unfolding truths. The question loomed larger now. Were they ready for the other's unveiled reality? The world outside continued in its vibrant chaos, but within the cocoon of their exchange, Daniel's apprehensions began to yield to a sense of possibility. If their emotional expedition revealed uncomfortable enigmas, could they persist through them together? The weight of an unexamined past lingered heavily, yet the siren call of potential drew him closer to vulnerability. Daniel inhaled sharply, processing the shadows of his insecurities, ready to leap again into this exchange that now ignited newfound determination. Yet lurking just behind this invigorating rush was a haunting acknowledgement.
If Sarah's truth indeed unveiled layers of wealth, both tangible and emotional, would it change everything he thought he understood about love, success, and even the worthiness of their relationship? The stakes of their unfolding story escalated, drawing nearer with every honest word spoken. As Sarah prepared to share a piece of herself, Daniel realized he stood at the brink of discovery, and it terrified him to know that the next revelation might tip the balance of their fragile connection. The silence that followed Sarah's candid admission about trust hung heavy in the air, a tangible barrier neither of them broke. Daniel's mind raced, filtering through a cocktail of emotions, fear, anticipation, and a flicker of hope. The unspoken fear lurking at the edges of their conversation, its shadow creeping in, taunted him with images of the unknown. He wanted to push through, to thrust himself deeper into the exploration he had begun, yet something vital, something ineffable, held him back. Swallowing hard, he sensed him grappling not just with the vulnerability of sharing his own truths, but grappling with the weight of expectations. What if Sarah's response changed everything? The thought sent a jolt through him, churning his stomach. Would her revelations shatter the newfound bond they were uncovering, or would it deepen their connection? Okay then, he breathed, his voice steadier than he felt. Let's bring each other through this. What do you want to share first? A thoughtful expression crossed her face, illuminating the shadows of her own internal battle. It dawned on Daniel just how intertwined their experiences were. She too was wrestling with fear. Her bravery in confronting it inspired him. I guess I'd start with my upbringing, she began. My family didn't have much money, and I often felt the pressure to perform, to prove my worth. Achievements became my currency, grades, scholarships. I thought that was how I'd earn love. But as I accumulated accomplishments, I felt emptiness creeping in like a whisper that I wasn't enough on my own. Her gaze bore into his, a direct challenge to see her fully, past her accomplishments. It was as if she was laying down her armor piece by piece, revealing the tenderness beneath. He'd seen those accomplishments previously as a measure of her success, a badge that garnered respect. Now they morphed into stories of her struggles, of the fragility that accompanied each accolade.
Now it looks like I've done well, but deep down I fear someday people will see past that and only see the girl who was terrified of falling short. Daniel felt the burden of her fears resonate within him. They were a mirror to his own. The very fabric of his identity, his work-focused persona, crumbled slightly under the weight of shared understanding. "What about you, Daniel?" she prompted, her tone laced with genuine curiosity, cutting through the thickening tension in the room. "What's your story?" He hesitated.
After Sarah's brave revelation, it seemed trivial to share the stunted notions he carried inside himself. The fear of exposing the stubborn vulnerabilities that built his facades clawed at him. As he opened his mouth to speak, he felt the tremor in his hands again, but this time it felt different. It felt like an invitation rather than an obstacle. "I think I've always chased this image of success," he admitted, forcing words beyond the flutter of panic rising in his chest. "I came from a family that valued stability above all, and I thought if I could rise in my career, if I could just get to that next promotion, everything would fall into place. I believed it would solidify my worth, but sometimes I feel like I'm running on a hamster wheel." The admission stung, exposing a truth he had kept submerged. Professional recognition dictated his self-esteem, but also rendered him blind to the joys of discovery that existed outside the realm of expectations. "Now that I've found someone like you, someone so unapologetically real, I'm starting to realize how much I've confined myself to a narrative that doesn't allow for joy being different from validation." The rawness of his confession made him feel exposed, stripped down by his own words. Perhaps in unveiling himself, he was beginning to claim authority over his own narrative, a narrative that could be rewritten as they moved forward. But what if I do pursue things that spark that joy? The question hovered in the space between them, an uncharted territory begging to be explored. As he posed it, hope mingled with trepidation, teasing at both possibility and consequence, a simultaneous rush that electrified the atmosphere. Sarah's eyes widened, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "Then there's nothing holding you back. You have the chance to rewrite your own story, Daniel. But are you ready for what that might bring?" The air shifted again, thickening with the weight of their shared fears and desires. In that very moment, Daniel realized he stood poised at the junction of transformation, staring into the eyes of vulnerability. Would he embrace the unfolding potential of his true self, or retreat into the safety of the familiar? As Sarah leaned closer, her curiosity evident, an unsettling thought ignited with him. What if diving into this newfound emotional authenticity not only exposed their vulnerabilities, but also revealed truths that could disrupt the delicate fabric of their relationship? A single question loomed large. What hidden aspects of their lives would surface in this earnest exploration of self, and were they both truly ready for that reality? Daniel sat cross-legged on his bedroom floor, surrounded by a swirl of papers and textbooks, yet the chaos felt different now. He had taken the leap, the promise of an authentic connection with Sarah buoying him above the weight of doubt.
With each shared truth, he felt himself rising above the shame he had once bound him, paving a path towards an unseen horizon filled with newfound potential. Days turned into weeks, and those stolen moments transformed their world. Each conversation became a dance of vulnerability, both of them striving to unearth the truths buried beneath layers of expectation. Each revelation brought forth another layer of their stories. He discovered that Sarah's lavish lifestyle had never defined her love for art, and in turn he started redefining his career through passion rather than obligation. The shackles of inadequacy loosened with every shared laugh and story. One late evening, as they wrapped up a long discussion about aspirations and dreams, Daniel felt the air hum with promise. Sarah's voice, warm and steady, nudged him forward. "Daniel, what do you want more than anything right now?" The question settled over him, expansive and honest. His heart raced, for he knew the answer now, an answer that encompassed more than mere success. "I want to build something together. I want our lives intertwined, filled with passion, devoid of the old fears, business without anxiety, love without hesitation." Her eyes sparkled, mirroring the determination bubbling within him. He had come to realize that success didn't merely dwell in academic achievements, the frameworks of mathematics, but in the spaces they filled together, the way vulnerability transformed into strength. In that moment, Daniel noticed something profound shifting inside him. He began gathering the remnants of his past insecurities, the disappointment that had shadowed him for so long, and instead of letting it linger,
He committed it to words, tying them into a confession like a charm on a bracelet. I've been scared of being seen as anything but a math teacher. I've built a wall where the formula for success once put me on a pedestal, but now I want the world to see the real me. Sarah encompassed him in a gentle hug, her essence a soothing balm to the lingering heartache he had clung to. You are so much more than that title, and you have a right to redefine your identity. I see it in the way you embrace complexity and how you fiercely care for others. You matter in and of yourself. As they pulled back, Daniel sparked with renewed determination, firm confidence blooming within him like wildflowers breaking through concrete. He was ready, not just to embrace Sarah's world, but to weave his own dreams alongside hers seamlessly. She had opened the doorway to collaboration, creativity, and emotional authenticity, and he stepped confidently through. The weekend illuminated the turning point in their journey. Daniel, with Sarah's unwavering support, organized a community event at the school. It included displays of student artwork and a workshop on applying mathematics creatively in artistic expression.
The idea took shape quickly, and he dedicated himself to fostering a space where creativity merged with academia, an event that reflected his journey towards acceptance, one that existed beyond the fear of not being enough. The day arrived, and parents and townsfolk filled the school atrium, intrigued by the uncharted territory he was forging. "Welcome, everyone," Daniel addressed the crowd, excitement bubbling inside him. "Today's event is about recognizing the beauty of melding disciplines, art and math, emotion and logic." A ripple of curiosity washed through the audience, and as he connected with them through his project, he felt the barriers fading. Feedback poured in like rain, validating the work he had poured himself into. Attendees celebrated not just the art, but the layers of personal stories each piece told, echoes of a diverse community colliding into one space, the definition of worth no longer finite, but expansive. The words, "You inspire," reverberated in a way he could have never imagined. They floated lightheadedly after the event, Daniel beaming with quiet pride. "This is just the beginning," he said, turning to Sarah as they exited the venue that had marked a personal achievement, both exhilarating and liberating. She smiled back, and in that expression he saw acceptance mirrored. The pressure to live within the bounds of expectation melted away. Instead, they stood rooted in a newfound competency, capable of the intricate dance that life demanded. "Could you imagine the potential for what's next?" she mused thoughtfully. Daniel nodded, solidifying his belief not just in his professional future, but the mutual promise that their love could conquer and grow, thriving within the tapestry they had begun weaving. "Together, we can transform the narratives we've been conditioned to accept. The possibilities are endless." And as they walked side by side, the future stretched before them, an expanse filled with potential, boundless joy, and a heartfelt understanding that they could, together, create a life defined not by insecurities, but by the fullness of being truly, entirely themselves. Before long, each personal growth moment transformed into shared laughter, adventure, and resilience, fostering a life ignited not by fear, but a vibrant coalition of two uniquely intertwined narratives. So, do you believe in the power of shared stories? Do you understand the significance of celebrating individual journeys while nurturing a connection? You need to subscribe now to witness more of these incredible journeys of personal transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show that these stories matter. Comment below your reactions and thoughts about Daniel's transformational journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how love and vulnerability can reshape lives. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.